the order is received through email, telling them their order is accepted, processed. The communication from receipt of order till delivery of order is very important. I think we don't talk about it enough. I would say that advice I would give to founders instead of what's going wrong. Number one, startups seem glamorous in the newspapers and the press, but
Hey everyone, this is Mination and welcome back to another episode of Modernizing Biz podcast. On this episode, we have a very special guest with us. We have Arjun with us. You for the fact you all know about D2C brands and everything, and you know the insights of Arjun. Arjun is a leading investment firm, and he's also a founder at Dr. Vaidya. Hi Arjun, how are you doing?
Hi Manish, thank you for having me on the podcast and excited to record this in Indore with you.
Okay, I guess you're traveling over here for the first time.
Yes.
And before starting, I want to know, do you know what is the special dish of Indore?
No, I don't. I hope you can make me try it.
Yeah, it's poha jalebi.
Poha jalebi.
Have you tried it?
Never
No.
tried it.
Okay, so we'll start off with your previous journey. So, I know for the fact that you was working for a corporate job in somewhere in US, and so when this D2C happened, like in what year you find out that I have more inclination towards D2C?
Yeah. So I went to college in the US. I came back to India in 2013. I worked at a private equity fund called L Capital, now called L Carrington. The fund I worked in, we were investors in Fab India, PVR Cinemas, and companies like that. So focused on the consumer sector. And as I was working there and learning more about the Indian consumption story, how India consumes, what's happening with e-commerce. As a investor, the good thing that you get to do is you get to meet lots of people who are doing very well, right?
Agreed.
So in 3 years, I met 150 entrepreneurs across
Wow.
cars, bike, fashion, jewelry, apparel, lifestyle, wine, spirits, food, beverage. And I met the best, right? Just the best. And I realized that actually what motivated me was the brands they were building. So at the back of my mind, I said, even one day I want to build a brand, right? The background to my brand was actually my family legacy. So Vaidya, my last name means Ayurvedic doctor. I have a 150-year family legacy in Ayurveda. My grandfather, great-grandfather, and generations before Ayurvedic doctors. The business, as you see it today, was not a business. It was an Ayurvedic clinic that my grandfather ran. And before my grandfather, my great-grandfather ran it. My grandfather had like 350 patients a day in his clinic, 12,000 patients writing to him via post, but he didn't have a business, right? And my dad graduated from college. He is a businessman, and he wanted to make the clinic into a business, but doctors and businessmen don't see eye to eye. So eventually my dad started a jewelry and watch business. But I grew up with asthma. I grew up with juvenile bronchitis. I grew up with pumps, nebulizers, inhalers, steroids. You know, I really like cricket. I was stopped from playing cricket when I was age 7 because there was too much dust on the cricket field and it wasn't good for my breathing. And by age 15, my dad had cured me of asthma. So I made him a promise I'll do something through Ayurveda. And so I made him a promise I'll do something with the legacy. And so in 2016, after he passed, I remembered this promise. And so I quit my job and I said, I'm going to take forward my Dada's legacy and make Ayurveda appealing and accessible to consumers like you. That was the gap. And so that's the background behind how I started my brand. Specifically D2C though was a different story. So we started offline like most brands in 2016. We failed miserably offline because I was too young. I didn't know how to do offline. I could not compete with the really large brands and consumers weren't interested or knew enough about my product. I didn't have a marketing budget, right? So I put out 10 lakh rupees worth of stock in the market. I got 9 lakhs back in 3-4 months.
Oh my God, you got the returns.
Yeah, because nobody was buying the product. And that's when my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was in the founding team at Nykaa or the early team at Nykaa. And she said that there are lots of people who are doing Ayurveda offline, but nobody's doing Ayurveda online. So why don't you try that opportunity? And so I convinced her to join the business. And we started our D2C journey in November 2017.
Amazing. So you touched the point that you launch your initial product in offline market. So what do you consider this? Like there's a very huge, if you talk about a debate that is happening around, either you should launch your product in offline, online, and or you want to plan a hybrid model, like a lot of MNCs do. So what do you think? So which is the best fit plan if someone want to start a D2C? What should be an exact roadmap? Should go for a offline, online, or a hybrid plan according to you?
Look, I would say you got to think about your category, right?
Okay.
So, in a category like personal care or health and wellness, um, or fashion even, right? Online is a deep enough market already. It's a large enough market. There are examples of large enough brands, so there's no problem building
Right.
these online, right? But if you look at food and beverage, let's say, which are impulse purchase categories, low average order values, you may have to go with the offline focused, offline first, or quick commerce at least
Agree.
strategy, right? Because consumers want the product fast. So I will say that the entry point can be online for most categories except food and beverage. Uh, but eventually, at some point, we have to accept that online is only 4% of retail in India. That number will increase to 10, 15%, maybe get up to 50% like China, but it'll take time. And so at some point, you may see tapping out or plateauing,
Yeah.
right? And that's when I would leverage the offline channel. So what happened with Dr. Vaidya's, right? We entered offline before we were known brand. Stores didn't give us attention, mind space, and enough visibility space. Nobody bought the product. But is Dr. Vaidya's to go offline today, when it's a known brand, has 2 million plus customers, does 5,000 orders a day, the terms of trade you'll get in offline will be very different. So my advice is online is a great entry point, a great channel to seed your brand, to get the first set of customers, and then eventually for scale you can go omni-channel. And I think that when the pandemic hit, everything moved online. Right?
Agree.
All consumption moved online. My parents, who had never consumed online or bought online, started buying products online. And so all of us started believing that online is the only consumption channel. Nobody's going to go and consume offline. But that's changed now. The world is open. Offline consumption is open. And so now for me, it's always hybrid or omni-channel. That's the right strategy for scale. But the starting point can be online to seed your brand.
Perfect. Now, if you want to see, since you've been working almost more than 5 years, you know in and out of e-commerce, a D2C brand, D2C as an industry. If you look at, so I want to know like how you tell us a bit about how you see the growth curve. Like what was the scenario in India 5 years from now? Like if you go in the backside, so what does the 5 years before look like, and what do you think so upcoming 5 to 10 years look like? Because I was shocked that you touched the point that there is only 4% of the retail which is happening online, but it seems now that there is like 80%, 70% which is happening online. Might possible our eyes are there,
That's where we are. That's our eyes,
that's
our
our
mind
eyes.
frame,
I
right?
agree.
And I think before I even talk about the future and the past and where we're going, I think one very important thing you touched on is our eyes and what we see, right? But as entrepreneurs, I think our job is to view the world beyond our personal bias. So I think the biggest problem with D2C or consumer brands is that you are a consumer of the product yourself. So your friends and family. And so sometimes their bias or your personal bias gets into your brand. Take the example of Dr. Vaidya's. 82% of Dr. Vaidya's orders came from outside the top 10 cities.
Okay.
Now, I am a Mumbai-based consumer who's urban and I consider myself elite, but my customer is not necessarily that. So understanding your customer and removing your personal bias is very important in building of a consumer brand, right? Now, if I talk about what happened in the past, so 5 years ago, by the way, D2C didn't exist as a term. Didn't even exist as a term. And I would go to investors and say, I'm an e-commerce focused, online only, digital first brand. And people would say, really, like, is there a market to build something online only, right? And that's changed now. So I think there are 3 phases I would talk about. Pre-pandemic, where 2018, 2019, the first set of customers had already come online, shopped on Amazon, Flipkart, Pepperfry, Jabong, Bluestone, Zivame, all of these platforms, the early sort of vertical and horizontal platforms, but more marketplace or multi-brand platforms. And so they brought the concept of online consumption, and brands started then being built, brand only, D2C only, single brand stores, websites, brands that focus on online started being built in 2016, 17. We were the first cohort of brands. In 18, 19, we started getting traction, started getting users came online, they started trusting us, buying from us. 2020, everything changed, right? So we already established some amount of credibility, and then the pandemic hit, and there was huge surge in demand, huge amount of sales in the online space. With that, a very large number of brands came into the ecosystem, right? If you see Ayurveda, after our exit, more than 50 brands have reached out to me saying we've launched D2C Ayurveda. So if that's the case, then think about the number of brands. In certain spaces, there are 2x, 5x, or 10x the number of D2C brands because of the growth people saw in the pandemic. Now what we've seen is a normalization or people going back to their old habits.
Okay.
Yes, we are better off than the pandemic, for sure. And I think that now D2C as a category as well has matured, right? So I think quality of brands, quality of founders, quality of conversation, technicality as well. Like I tell founders, it took me 1 year to learn how to build an e-commerce business, to build a D2C business. Today you have 8 weeks because everybody knows Shopify, WooCommerce, website, performance marketing, warehousing, logistics, CRM. You know all of these things, right? So I think as an operator today, you need to be much more savvy or know much more of reality. The future for me looks very, very exciting, very, very bright. We all are talking about a $100 billion D2C market by 2025. We've had multiple unicorns now in D2C, whether you look at Mamaearth, or you look at Boat, or you look at Licious. And we'll see many, many more of these unicorns come out in D2C. But I think more than this, what I'm most excited about is the choice consumers have, right?
Okay.
If you like X type of product, you're wearing sneakers, I'm wearing sneakers. I've already met 10 plus Indian sneaker brands, right?
Agree.
So I can buy actually my own indigenous local sneakers, right? And similarly across categories, whether it's health, wellness, personal care, sports, nutrition, fashion, you now have so many options. And so the consumer is the one that wins.
Okay. So I come down to the next point that you touched the point that from awareness stage, from the post-pandemic stage, and now there are a lot of brands who have seen a very good spike in their sales, a good traction, just like you touched the point of Dr. Vaidya's, right? So now, do you consider them how one can launch their product in D2C for all the budding entrepreneurs, budding D2C startups who wanted to launch their product, but from the outside, the place feels very crowded.
Yeah.
Even if you say that it's just a 4%, it might be our eyes, but still it feels very crowded from the outside. How one can analyze that from an investor point of view?
Yeah, look, I'll say it from a founder's point of view because that's more
Okay,
relevant
that is
than an
what-
investor's point of view, right? Investor's point of view is once someone has done something to assess what they've done and partner with them. Founder's point of view, it is intimidating now to be a part of this ecosystem which has matured because you're like, I'm looking at every space, there are 10, 15, 20, 100, 200, 500 brands on Amazon, right? If I go and just do a simple search on Amazon. So I would say that my mental model is you got to first identify a problem, think of a solution, and then figure out why you have a right to win. For example, there are lots of problems in space. There are lots of solutions like rockets to solve those problems, go into space, create satellites. I have no right to win because I'm not even an engineer. So I can't start a company that sends a rocket to the moon, right? It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
There are lots of problems in health. And there are lots of solutions in natural health. And by the way, I have a 150-year legacy in Ayurveda. So that's the starting point for the conversation. From there, develop a high-quality product, try it, test it, give it to people, trademark it, brand it, pilot launch it, get feedback, and then go ahead. And with that, build a high-quality brand, right? That's more than a logo. Vision, mission statement, purpose. Consumers care more than just, hey, what is your logo or what are you selling? It's what do you stand for, right?
The experience to the product.
So I would say these are the 3 steps to starting. I mean, after this, there's lots in terms of creation of your storefront with your website, marketing, customer acquisition, supply chain, ops, logistics, warehousing, CRM, retention, marketplace strategy, and then eventual scale. And we found this very intimidating, right? When we were doing it, and we didn't have much help. My wife and I, as we started Dr. Vaidya's. So we now teach this as a cohort-based course as well. And I think there is lots of knowledge available. If you go online as a D2C founder, use all of that because the industry is much more mature. And so if you do a so-so wishy-washy job, chances are you won't be able to succeed now.
Okay. So you need to have something unique in the market.
And create that. So I think when you talk about unique, right? I think got to think of a few things. My favorite concept for a brand standing on its own 2 feet is moat. Moat is what is a moat first, right? In ancient world, castles, forts, they had this water body surrounding the building, and that was the last line of defense, an additional line of defense, right? Think about products or brands. You need that line of defense defensibility to prevent 100 people coming and just taking your market. And so for budding founders, I would say pick categories where there are consumers who have problems, but no brands are solving those problems. Pick categories where there's lack of clutter of brands. Pick categories where you have a right to win. Like, think about these things, your moat. So what was Jio's moat? Price. What was Boat's moat? Brand. What was Dr. Vaidya's moat? Form and accessibility. What is AirPods' moat? Ease of use. If you have an iPhone, you take out your AirPods, it automatically connects. That's ease of use, right? So think about this concept of moat when you're launching your brand.
Okay, so I'll come down to the second phase. Once have launched the brand, the product is right. I have couple of things, the two things that I want to talk. One about marketing for a D2C brand, and the second is the logistics, because you also know that for the fact that logistics still a big problem. Like a lot of startups face problems in inventory management. So for marketing, what do you think? So is if you can highlight a couple of strategies. I know for the fact that we have to do couple of things, not one or two. There's 100 things involved in marketing. We have to do all things at the time. But what do you want to, if you want to highlight top 2 or 3 strategies to promote one's D2C brand to get more sales or traction, what it would be?
Yeah, actually there's lots of things you have to do, but they fit under 2 buckets, right? Performance marketing and brand. Okay. I think the early set of D2C brands, including us, focused a lot on performance. Competition was less, brands advertising was less. So demand for ads was less, supply of ads was there. So we got a reasonable customer acquisition cost, CPMs, and we could survive. Right? Today, that's totally changed. The number of brands is increased, the supply of ads is limited, the demand for those ads is very high. So CAC is very high. And so in a market which is cluttered, where there's lots of competition, your performance marketing will only be efficacious, will only give you the ROAS that you want if you have a brand backing it, right? So I think today, the 2 buckets are performance marketing and brand. The right mix of performance marketing and brand. What is performance marketing? It's advertising on Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, largely these ecosystems, right?
Lead generation.
I think D2C mostly actually goes direct conversion, not just lead gen. But if you look at the funnel, right, building that top of funnel is also very important. And so content, community, influencer strategy, customer testimonials, all of these things will help you eventually build the right top of funnel that eventually lets you convert the customer. And so my rule or my feedback to D2C founders always is ascribe a certain amount of money on a monthly basis as a percentage of your sales or a percentage of your marketing budget towards brand, and don't change that. If you say, hey, I have a budget of 100 rupees, 25 rupees will go to brand, 75 rupees will go to performance. Next month, if you have a budget of 150 rupees, 37.5 has to still go to brand in that ratio of 25%. Else, you will not be able to establish top of funnel you want. And so the biggest mistake I see people make is, okay, I'm spending 10 rupees today in a 100 rupee budget. Tomorrow, if it's 200 rupee budget, I'll still spend 10 rupees. And then I'll stop sometimes and I'll start again because direct ROI nahi aata hai, right? And that's a mentality which we need to change if you want to build a long-lasting, everlasting brand that means something to consumers, right? And get the right sort of loyalty, get the right set of customers. I think the right mix of performance and brand is critical in the marketing stack.
Amazing. Now, if you talk about the logistics side, and let's go on a back end of operating an e-commerce brand. So a lot of people, let's take an example, even after their performance marketing is good, they develop a brand plus the marketing, the leads and everything is going good, but they're not able to deliver the customer the experience that they wanted because product is getting delayed. I've seen a lot of brands like I'm also working closely for helping them in marketing. So I know for the fact that even they are getting 1,000 orders, they are able to dispatch 500 on time, and this 500 still in bucket, and अब वो manufacturing हो रही है.
So how they can charge? As an early stage founder, you get excited by the Shopify backend, your Google Analytics, and you see itne orders aaye, right? But the job starts once the order is received. So communicating to the customer when the order is received through email, telling them their orders, accepted, processed, the communication from receipt of order till delivery of order is very important. I think we don't talk about it enough. Every additional day that you take to dispatch the order, there's a 12% higher chance of RTO. Okay. We have to accept reality. India is still 65%, 70% COD market. And so getting the order accepted by the customer is critical, because if you send an order out and it comes back, you actually calculate your efficiency of marketing on the orders received, not on the orders delivered. And so you'll realize actually your 2.53, 4x ROI is actually 20, 30, 40% lower basis your delivery rate, right? And so operating a efficient warehouse, dispatching orders in time, if orders are returned or customers not accepting, getting that reason and figuring out what to do next, that's very important, right? So keeping your RTO or return rate as low as possible, getting as many orders delivered is the battle one, according to me. Good logistics, good operations, good unboxing experience at customers' home, that will create loyalty for you, right? So I like experiences where I get a WhatsApp communication when my order is dispatched, when my order is delivered, post my order delivered, for reordering. So at Dr. Vedis, we had a flow 25 days after delivery of order, you would get a call, SMS, push notification, and WhatsApp saying,
Amazing.
hey, you have to order again, or it's time to renew.
So people don't get like you. There's a lot of hate towards cold emailing. I would say you're not cold emailing them.
I
right
actually
away.
think there's less hate towards cold emailing, there's more hate towards cold calling.
Yeah, you can say that. So what do you say? Like cold emailing, cold calling, and cold messaging is still a go-to for the upcoming brand, no matter the industry.
Yeah, I think you have to do it. But you got to establish a balance between doing it to get the sales but not annoying the customer. It's a tightrope you have to go on. But I think so many founders say, I get annoyed when I get a call, so I'm not going to call my customers. But hey, my customers actually at Dr. Vaidya's didn't respond to emails so much. So I used to get a 7x ROI from my calls and a 2.5x ROI from my emails. Should I stop calling because I don't like calling? No, right? And so again, this point of remove personal bias from the way you operate your brand.
Amazing. Now, if you talk about from the investor's point of view, so what are the what are the pointers, what are the parameters that you see before investing into into a D2C brand? If you talk about D2C as an industry.
Look, I think for me, I come in usually at an earlier stage. And so I look at three things. I look at first founder. Who is that person? Will they fight through tough times and come out of it? And why do they have a right to win? Right? So 50% of my decision is based on founder, honestly.
Okay.
Because at the early stage, you're betting on a person. 20% is on market size. So addressable market size. Is there really a large enough market? So for example, I'm gluten-free and sugar-free, right? But is there a market large enough for gluten-free, sugar-free products? In India, there may be 5 lakh people like me. So maybe I won't invest in a gluten-free, sugar-free products. Maybe sugar-free products is big enough, but gluten-free plus sugar-free may not be big enough, right? So that's point number 2, 20% on market size. And then point number 3 is the business, right? The sales, the growth velocity, the gross margins, the EBITDA profile, the path to profitability, the team, the growth projections, the plan, right? So recapping, 50% founder, 20% market size, and 30% business and economics.
Wow. Fine. So like one of the best thing, like one of the worst thing I would say that you have faced the problem working with startups. So you're working a lot with a lot of startups and you're linked to a startup ecosystem very deeply. So what are the problem that you think which is currently happening at mass level in startups and that you feel so that need to be solved in a short span of time?
Look, I think we're in a very good place with the Indian startup ecosystem. And I think we're much better placed than when I started. I found founders much better prepared. The quality, the conversation, the clarity of vision is much more. I think one problem we are facing is our ecosystem is growing faster than we can keep up with. And so we don't have enough mentorship and support in the ecosystem. So that's something that I spend a lot of time on. That's why I've taken a 7:15 a.m. flight on a Saturday to come to Indore and spend time with people here, right? Because I feel like in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, maybe Hyderabad, there's enough of this ecosystem being built, but there needs to be stuff built in Indore, in Chandigarh, in Surat. And that's really important. So I think we need to all work towards building a strong ecosystem. I would say that advice I would give to founders instead of what's going wrong. Number one, startups seem glamorous in the newspapers and the press, but it's lots of failure. So be ready for failure and fight with grit and resilience. Number two, you can't do it alone. I thought as a young 24.5-year-old entrepreneur, I could spend 16 hours a day and get everything done on my own. Reality is that 16 into 1 is 16 and 8 into 5 is 40. So 8 people working 5 hours a day or 5 people working 8 hours a day is much more efficient than one person working 16 hours a day. And by the way, you can't work 16 hours a day efficiently, right? And the third thing I would say is, this is something I'm seeing off late. Lots of young people saying, hey, I'm doing my job and I'm doing my startup as a side hustle. And then once my startup becomes big, I'll quit my job. Your podcast, my podcast, that's my hobby, right? I
Yeah.
do it just to do it to keep engaged. I enjoy doing it. But scalable startup cannot be built part-time. And it won't scale until you do it full-time. So it's a
Okay.
chicken and egg, but you got to take the plunge. And if you're not ready to take the plunge, that's fine. But don't operate a startup part-time.
Yeah. So
As my
now,
dad said, you can't be slightly pregnant with entrepreneurship. You're either in or you're out.
yeah. So I think job is also best fit. It's not like that a lot of people hating the job for the fact like job nahi karna, I will go for startup, I'll be entrepreneur with the founder. Again, they are chasing the glamorous side.
Yeah, don't be an entrepreneur for glamour. Be an entrepreneur to solve a problem, because if you do it for glamour, you'll realize very quickly that it's not so glamorous.
Yeah, it is not. So I totally relate to the fact that you're working like you want to work individually, wholesalely. Now, if you talk about some industry, some areas niche that India is from the western part of the world, so you're well connected with all the global broad bodies and everywhere. So what do you think? So what is the one thing that India is lacking behind, and there's a very good scope in those particular industries and niche which is not developed yet. If you want to highlight couple of them.
Yeah, look, I think we have lots of scope still in health and wellness.
Okay.
In unique products, we have a lot of scope in pet. Pet is a very upcoming category. I'm very excited about that category. Sports and home and kitchen. I just did up a new home, and yeah, we
Yeah.
struggle to find so many options online. So I think home, kitchen, sports, exciting spaces as well. And I think we need to have more Indian brands go global. I think that's where we are lacking as a country. We need to take our story and take it global. I didn't have time or the bandwidth to do it at Dr. Vaidya's, and that's something I regret. We couldn't take Dr. Vaidya's global. But I would love to see tens of hundreds of D2C brands from India going global and captivating imagination. We've seen a few brands do it, but there's lots more to be done.
Okay, towards going for the end of the podcast, I want to know one last thing from you. See, a lot of tier 2 market, if you look, remove the tier 1 cities, the top 10 cities of our country. So, a lot of tier 2 markets feel so that, like, if you want to build a huge company, we have to move out eventually. And if you look at the pricing and the cost of building, it's very relatively high. So, like, the salary in Mumbai is quite different from Indore or the
Yeah.
other city.
Yeah.
Like that, right? So what do you think? So is it a myth, or what's the scenario around it? People itself have a glamorous thing with the startups, or they need to move out to bigger cities to build something?
Yeah, so think about why people leave, right? People leave because there's not availability of talent or an ecosystem. And so they leave. As I said earlier, it's our job to build an ecosystem in more cities in India. Until that ecosystem is built, people will continue to leave, right? Because it's not so easy to build in a place where you don't get, let's say you need to hire 500 engineers for a tech business, for an online travel agency, right? If Make My Trip was being built in Indore. You may not have the quality of 500 engineers today, but are we able to build it? Yes, we are. And so it all boils down to building the right environment to foster entrepreneurship. And I think we have some way to go in tier 2 cities in India, but the potential is immense, right? The cost of operating is much lower, and the quality of life is better. Your team will get bigger houses, better infrastructure in these places as opposed to a city like Bombay. While I'm from Bombay and I'm very passionate Mumbaikar, I would say that I'm here because I believe ecosystem should be built across our country. We can build 10, 15, 20 startup hubs. If we do that, India is a formidable country in the world in terms of startups. But until an ecosystem is built, people will leave. And so our job is to build that ecosystem.
Wow. Thanks a lot for being on Modernizing Biz podcast. I hope the audience will get a lot of value out of this conversation, and looking forward to record mind-blowing content afterwards so that we'll get more deeps into the business. And thanks a lot, Arjun, for
Thank
being
you
on
so
the
much
show.
for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.